Alright, so I guess it's fair to say that the seasons are changing in Company of Heroes 2, because the thing that you're revealing now, talking about now, is the sort of the seasonal impact on the game. And sort of, you started out talking about the snow and all of that, and that's very impressive tech there, but there is more to the game than snow. Right.
Yeah, definitely. So we obviously started off with Company of Heroes 2. We wanted to really hammer home the fact that we're on the Eastern Front. So we definitely started with the iconic sort of snowy fields and that idea of like the frozen sort of hell that the Eastern Front was. But this was a really long conflict. This is a conflict that ran from 1941 to 1945, so it was about a lot more than just snow, and that's something that we're trying to bring to life in this game with the idea of seasonal warfare. So yeah, we're actually now, this beat, we're kind of showing people for the first time some of our spring and summer maps. In Company of Heroes 2, you're going to see a load of variety. You're going to see, obviously, the snowy winter frozen tundra, but you're also going to see some of the spring and summer maps. You're going to see some of the most iconic cities. You're going to see battles in the countryside. You're going to see battles at day, battles at night. There's going to be a lot of variety that's going to give people a real feel for what this conflict was like and some of the diversity of tactics and sort of areas they fought over during the Eastern Front.
Because when you describe it, when you see it come in sort of in practice, it almost sounds like if it had been a different game where you didn't have all of these things, it would have been like, okay, and the spring maps are a different mode. They're a different experience. There are different objectives to sort of pinpoint there, because it really does change the way you play it. It's not just like, you know, the different textures, right?
Yeah, so one idea we're kind of working around on this is the idea of seasonal warfare. It's the idea that the player's going to have to adapt or they're going to die. It's you can't just play the same on a spring map as you would on a winter map. As we kind of covered off in our last sort of interview with you guys, we have this new cold tech technology which really brings to life winter with deep snow, breakable ice, hypothermia, all those things. But then in the spring and the summer maps are going to bring their own set of challenges. So to give you an example, if you play the same map on once in spring, once in winter, you're going to have a completely different gameplay experience, even though it's the same basic map. So in the springtime, it's going to be a much faster pace of gameplay. You're not going to be slowed down by things like sort of deep snow. You're not going to have to worry about your troops freezing to death. So you're not going to have to worry about staging the ground, putting them in vehicles, things like that. It's going to be faster. But it's also going to be more constricted. Let's imagine we've got a map, for example, that has a river going through the middle. This river has a bridge, and it has 2 fording points at the side. Now, that means there's 3 specific points that you're going to be able to cross that river. The rest of it's going to be impassable to your troops. So, you know, you can blow up bridges in this game and rebuild them. You could set traps. You can set up kind of ambushes either side of those. So there's 3 distinct points on that map. So the combat is going to be very much focused around those, because both players are going to need to cross that river. Now, you play that same map again on winter settings, it's going to be the same map, but it's going to play completely differently. That river is going to freeze solid. You're going to be able to cross it at any point. So the map opens right up, but it's also going to slow right down because of the depth of the snow. Players are going to have to start worrying about those infantry. You know, you can cross the ice at any point, but that ice can then be broken underneath you. It can be used as a weapon against you. So your tactics have to be completely different, even down to the commander abilities that you take into battle with you. We have this sort of option system for the player. The commander abilities, you can take up to 5 with you. Passive and active. Passive skills let you unlock things earlier. Active skills, for example, maybe a call-in. Let's say, for example, on the spring maps, you really like the idea of air support call-ins, so you have a lot of kind of strafing runs, bomber runs, paratroopers, things like that. Now, that's great for those spring maps. You try and take that onto a winter map, the problem you're going to have is every time a blizzard blows in, suddenly all air support is null and void. So you might find yourself in desperate need of some kind of call-in, sort of being pushed back by your opponent, and if a blizzard blows in at the wrong time, you're on your own. There's no way you can use those abilities, so you're going to have to think really carefully about what commander abilities you use, not just for what map, but also for the conditions.
So will players be able to experience all maps in different seasons, and sort of how, is that how you design the game, or will it be sort of locked in that there's a winter and a spring map on this version of this one, or how do you structure it up?
So from a campaign perspective, because obviously we don't want to just recycle everything on every basis, you're going to see a couple of instances where you're going to return to a site later in the war and it's going to be in a different season. But a lot of it's going to be completely different, or the majority of it's going to be completely different. From a multiplayer perspective, we're going to have a lot more crossover between the two, where you're going to be able to switch them over. You're not going to necessarily have every single map in the game where we're going to have the winter and the summer versions, because it doesn't necessarily make sense on every map we've put in, but we're definitely trying to implement it into a large number of our multiplayer and skirmish maps, because it just adds that extra variety to the gameplay, and it's a really cool thing to be able to do, to kind of challenge someone on a map and then say, oh well, I would have had you if it was winter, fine, let's make it winter and let's do it again.
Would it be possible from a technological perspective to sort of have an accelerated time, so you can have sort of a changing season in one map, in one game, in multiplayer, for instance? Just a fantasy thing. I understand that like it doesn't really fit with the time scale of but as a sort of experiment.
It would have to be seriously accelerated. I mean, it's not something we're supporting in the game at the moment. We do have snow that accumulates and snow that builds up, and the temperature on maps changes in the winter season, so rivers refreeze, etc. So potentially, but it's not something we've got in the game at the moment. If you had a severely accelerated timeline or a very long map, it's something potentially could happen. But like I said, it's not something we focus on at the moment, because we're trying to keep authentic and realistic, and having a single battle that lasts
maybe something for the modders to
months might be bad. But yeah, I'm sure, like, we've got these maps that exist in both states, and we have things like the rivers that can, water that can refreeze, and, you know, snow that can fall and accumulate. So we've got some very clever modders in our community, so I'm sure someone will work something like that out.
So what's the plan ahead? What's next, and where are you at in development?
Yeah, so we're really making progress with development. We're actually getting ready to move into our closed beta phase now. We're winding up to multiplayer, so everything you've seen so far is kind of single player, but we're really excited to let you guys play all of those things in multiplayer, see how it all lines up. So our next beat's going to be a multiplayer beat. That's coming sort of really shortly, and then following on from that, we're going to have a closed beta go live. We'll be expanding that out in phases. Obviously, we need to do stress testing, but we want to get as many people in as possible. So people who've pre-ordered, people who've been attending shows, like for example at this show Game X, we've been giving away beta cards, which will give people early access to that closed phase. We did that at Eurogamer Expo. We've done that in a number of shows. And then the hardcore community as well, our community, our fans, all of those guys, we're going to try and get them in early. We're going to try and expand that beta out, really take that feedback and use it to sort of polish and improve the game, test all of our new systems, all the changes that we're putting into multiplayer. So that's kind of next for us is multiplayer. And then following on from that, we've got another couple of little surprises up our sleeve that we can't sort of wait to show you guys closer to launch.
All right. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Allied troops liberated Paris from the Nazi occupation. A victory the free world will never forget. In total, there were almost 500,000 American deaths in World War II, and over 300,000 British men and women lost their lives. And while their sacrifice was great, another's was even greater.